you stand apart from your contemporaries in the sense that your position, the position you take on modernity is visibly different from the position Indian writers, your contemporaries, take. What leads you to take such an unconventional position on modernity and take this extreme step of calling it an empty shell? I mean, would you please elaborate on that?
I said that basically in the context of Malayalam literature.
But I think it's also true of, I mean, you can extend, you are aware of literature in India and abroad. So.
You see, what happens is that I made that comment, I keep making this particular argument in Kerala too, because my only argument is this, that if the mind is not modern, how can your product be modern? How can your writing be modern? By being modern, I am not thinking about literature or literary values alone, or aesthetic values and philosophical values alone. If you're contemporary, if you're living in contemporary India, I think our biggest engagement is with freedom of the individual, with democracy, with secular values, with justice, with the civilizational values, with justice for the poor, with justice for everyone. If these things, and if a writer, for example, is communal in his mind, any which way, whether he is a Hindu, Muslim or Christian, if he has, or if he's a casteist in his mind, or if he's a class-bothered, class-conscious person, I don't know how he can be described as modern. Can he produce a modern world view? He may be able to ape and mimic a certain modernist form very brilliantly.
Yes.
He could create, as a painter maybe he could create fantastic forms. As a poet he could write something extraordinarily brilliant. But I think somewhere the man inside will seep through.
Yes.
This is what I fear. So it happens in Kerala, it keeps happening all the time, that modernity is treated as a mechanical issue. You have to change. You have to take, as I said, radical, I mean, you must think freely, independently, and not allow all these things to, catch hold of you.
There is another statement that you recently made which interests me a great deal, which is you celebrate the diversity of India, its multilingual culture, its multicultural character, and you think that this is something unique in the world.
Yes.
Through your writings, through your kind of activism, you are playing a role, significant role in countering this threat. So what can writers do? Because we as Oriya writers, as scholars, academics would like to learn from this. That is there any way in which we can counter this threat?
I think the first thing is that the writers and intellectuals must become in themselves aware that we are functioning in a much larger India than our little or big or whatever literatures. It is true that I write in Malayalam, that I am doing whatever I can to keep Malayalam my engagement with Malayalam language up to date and interesting, etc., etc. But if you also don't keep an eye open and an ear open for the voices from the rest of India, maybe it will take a little extra effort to know what's going on. So on the one hand, you must know that you are working in the larger picture of the Indian literature. I don't believe there is one Indian literature. There must be at least 50 Indian literatures which are active. So for convenience we call that. So I am a part of that picture. So on the one side, I must know that, so that I have a sense of fellowship with writers, whether it is in Kashmir, whether it is in Chhattisgarh, or whether it is in Bihar, or wherever it is, or in Orissa. That sense of fellowship will remain, because we are all trying to do the same things with language and with imagination. Only thing is, these are very different, because the way Kerala or a Malayali imagines would be totally different from the way
local conditions
will this one
affect the
yes,
way
will affect. The second level is the steps that have to be taken, which attempts have been made, feeble attempts have been made all these years through institutions like National Book Trust and the Sahitya Akademi to cross-translate between languages. But for one reason or the other, into which we need not go into here, these attempts at cross translation have been very, they have been failing and almost dying.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there are private institutions like Katha in Delhi and all, who are doing a lot of translation into English.
Yes,
into English.
That was the point I was coming to.
Yeah.
The translation process in India generally takes place in one direction. Most of the regional literatures are getting translated into English. So in a way that dilutes or even undermines cultural diversity. And you are a great champion of state-to-state cultural contact and through translation. Can you think of an institutional arrangement which can make this possible?
There is something called, I think about a couple of years back, the government of India had set in motion something called, I think it was called a translation mission.
National
Translation Mission. And I don't know whether it is, but I haven't heard anything about its activities after that. It was a dream. It really was.
But it should have come, I think, much earlier.
It should have come much
at the beginning.
I
mean, as soon as we achieved independence,
it should have come with the Constitution of India.
Yes.
That is what I have always felt. Otherwise, how do you bring minds together, There's no way. And you can introduce, for example, now that we are talking about it, I'll just mention this point. You can introduce into primary school textbook onwards a little bits of writings from other languages, if it's in Kerala, in Malayalam, you can, of course, Tagore is always there because he is such a senior, superior figure. But sometimes you see a little bit of Premchand, again because he is a giant. But otherwise, you can introduce, writings into...
Say Bhalathol.
Yes.
A bit from Chemin maybe, or from Subramaniam Bharati.
Yeah, Subramaniam Bharati. So that
Shivram Karan.
Yes, Shivram Karan. So that the children will at least remember the names.